Hey, hello everyone. I'm Larry Reisman, community editor and columnist for TC Palm and the Press Journal. And I'd like to welcome you to what we hope will be an interesting interactive meeting regarding plans for the three corners Vero Beach owns at Indian River Boulevard and 17th Street. I'm joined behind the scenes by TC Palm's Adam Neal and Kelly Rogers, who will moderate and produce this event on social media. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions and comment on Facebook. And if you like, make a request on Facebook to come on live from your own home if you have a webcam and a quality internet connection. We'd love your feedback after hearing from our guests. Our guests tonight are Monty Falls, Vero Beach City Manager, and Andres Duani, an architect, urban planner, and founder and principal partner at DPC Group, which Vero Beach has hired to plan the future for the three corners that is home to a sewage plant right now, also a former postal annex and a power plant. Duani led a series of community meetings earlier this year that led to a proposal for the three corners presented January 31st at the First Presbyterian Church. The plan was so well received it got a standing ovation. Since then, a steering committee has worked with Duani on the plan. A lot, including COVID-19, has happened since then. Later, Mr. Duani will give a presentation on the latest plan. But right now, City Manager Monty Falls can fill you in on more.
Hey, thanks, Larry. I'm joined here tonight with our planning director, Jason Jeffries, who has kind of been the project manager on this Three Corners project since it got started. But we were really fortunate to get DPZ Group and Andres Duani to help us through this process. And they've spent a lot of time painstakingly interacting with the public and with the city officials to get some scenarios that we're all ready to make some decisions on. And then, as you all know, we had the global pandemic. Mr. Duani at our last meeting had some new ideas of how he thought, urban planning would change with that. And he has presented a new plan for us to consider. And the steering committee actually endorsed that plan at the last meeting, July the 21st. Yeah, July 21st. And there were some comments that were made, I think that Mr. Duani will talk about later in his presentation that he's incorporated in that redesign. And we've been real excited about the Three Corners project since it got started and the possibilities it could bring to Vero Beach with having a vibrant place down on the riverfront that we could all take advantage of and enjoy the outdoors and the river and all that has to offer. So with that, Larry, I'll turn it back over to you. We'll be here for you if you have any questions, and Jason and I let us know.
Thanks, Monty. I appreciate it. And Jason, congratulations on your new addition in the household. Jason had a son today, so congratulations. Andres, you're down south tonight in your studio, I guess. We'd love to hear what your new plans are.
Okay. This process, can you hear me? Is everything working? This process began probably more than a year ago, and there were different phases. One was distance input, in which several thousand people participated with their ideas. And then a pretty large team from our office showed up in Vero Beach and spent a week designing in the presence of the decision makers, which include not only the citizens that walked in, but outreach that was made to geographically different parts of the city. So that people would be comfortable, not having to come into the center. And we spoke to city council. We had a steering committee that was available for consultation. Of course, city manager, controller, basically all the people who have a say in the decision and those who will use it. We presented, my contract required 5 plans be presented. One of them was what happens if we do nothing. Another one was what do the neighbors want, the immediate neighbors? Then basically the residents as a whole were not immediate neighbors. And then there was one which was the city council plan, which was not only the city council, but the city manager, basically the people who have to get it built and vote on it. And finally, there was my own plan. Like what would I synthesize from all the other plans that would be the recommended one, the professional plan, because I would collect, I think, the most viable ideas from all of them. When I presented that evening at the church, I forgot the name of the church, it was very, very well attended. It was a wonderful experience. There was, as you said, a standing ovation, and the plan was beloved. And so then we came back to Miami, spent a month or so interacting with Monty, the city manager, et cetera. And we prepared a plan for a vote first by the steering committee and then by the city council. Well, it went very well in that voting, that meeting. And after we had been to maybe you can show the first one. After we had,
can you show our screen sharing?
Yeah, you want to put that on, Kelly, or do we see it? Oh, this is the second one there. I'll put it on, Kelly. Oops.
Okay, we need to
There
put
we
out
go.
our screen, please.
Okay.
Can you see our?
Can you see our screen?
Yeah, there we go. Yep. Looks good.
Okay, keep going. Let's show the first one. Okay, no. Okay, I'm going to start. When that plan was essentially well accepted, let me put it that way, I volunteered that the situation economically, culturally had changed so much in the 3 or 4 months since we had done the plan that I volunteered to make a new plan. And the new plan was based on our current situation of a pandemic and the economic repercussions of the pandemic. You know, the fact that many people had lost their jobs, many enterprises were closed, the tax ratables were not as they were before, and but above all, that the whole attitude towards the use of public and private space had changed. And I will give you just one example. When air conditioning was first introduced in Florida, actually in the world, it wasn't just to cool the air, it was to cleanse the air. The air was cleaner because it was filtered, it was processed. Okay, it wasn't just about cooling. And suddenly there's a reversal in which air conditioning is now toxic. That's where the viruses might be. And if you read the literature, and it's every day in the newspapers, open the windows, go outdoors. Outdoors is the only place that's safe. Well, let me tell you, just like air conditioning was very good news for Florida, outdoor space is the use of outdoor and fresh space is also very good use for Florida. It's very good news for us because we're the only state that can actually use outdoor space 12 months a year. So basically, it's not bad news, it's good news, the outside space. The other thing that happened is the economic situation is such that, let's just say that in this particular project, when we began, the controller of the city said that there were about $20 million that were left from the sale of the electrical utility. And the electrical utility, and that was in a lockbox. Now, it was not necessarily dedicated to this park, to this site, but it could be. And she said the ongoing problem is maintenance, is actually the operational cost. We've got money to build it, but there's no operational cost, okay? Well, 2 weeks ago, speaking to Monty, when we were looking at the plan, Monty said, and I said, this plan's gonna take, everybody loves the plan, but somebody has to put in the infrastructure, somebody has to put in the landscaping, somebody has to, and Monty said, well, how much would that be? And I said, well, about, I don't know, $5 to $7 million for, that the developers are not gonna put in. And Monty said, well, we haven't got 5 to 7 million. So basically, what I'm gonna show you today are two different plans. One is a very exciting, what I would call post-pandemic plan, which is beautiful and delightful. But in my professional opinion, it doesn't pay for itself. And then on the behalf of the situation in Vero, the economic situation, particularly the coming economic situation, I did a plan that would actually more than pay for itself. And I spent the last 5 days doing that plan since Monty and I spoke. To a certain extent, there's going to be some confusion because you can actually combine elements of both. And to a certain extent, it's perfectly clear. Either you have the money or you don't. You either have the money to build it, out of the city coffers, or you don't have the money to build it out of the city coffers. And so we need to have something that actually generates the funds by bringing developers in. And that's the last plan, is not one that anybody has seen, but I want to show it to you. Now, the very first plan that I showed at the beginning of the charrette was this one, because it shows very well, the Indian River Boulevard, the bridge, the good and bad of the site. But the main thing to realize is the site is very, very deep. And everybody thinks it's a waterfront site, but actually it's not, okay? The waterfront, where you actually feel it, is zone N1, North 1. That is when you're on the water. Okay? Zone N2 is attractive, but you don't really see the water. Zone N3 is where the power plant is, and that's industrial. And zone N4 is really just on Indian River Boulevard, and might as well be a parking lot, because that's what else is on Indian River Boulevard. And the same thing goes to the south. There's a wonderful kind of canal that is beginning to be, that's beginning to grow with native species. There's two very intriguing clean water tanks here that are beautiful structures. And then there is the old sewage plant, treatment plant, that is going to go, that's going to be cleared. But you have the same thing. You have an exceptionally good site to the east, full of water and the sea breezes, and then it becomes less interesting. So basically the site that we have is very good towards the east and really very mediocre towards the west. Now, there is a third piece, which is this zone W5, West 5, that can be sold to raise funds. It's what's left over after the new electrical transfer station was built. And it's on a corner, it's on an important corner, it's got a commercial value, but at least during the charrette, they said in the order of $1 or $2 million, which isn't enough. Okay, so here's the play. What do the three plans look like? And what we'd like to do is, because two of them are new, we'd like to see the opinion of the people. This is what this is. This is the extension of the public process. Now, bear in mind, okay, is that I didn't have to do this. Okay, this was not in my contract, the additional plans, so please bear with me. Okay, I wasn't paid to do it. I'm doing it because the world has so completely changed in the last 6 months that it is as if a new century had started. And it's going to be very, very difficult and important to know that things will be different. Okay, like for example, one of the things that we all love about parks and other places is when they're crowded. We love people. We love to be among people. We love, the festivals. We love the crowded flea markets. We love the crowded vegetable markets and so forth. Well, guess what? Now proximity is toxic. That's a complete reversal of what it used to be like. Like basically the ideal that we had in mind was crowded with people having fun, listening to music, packed in cafes and bars, jumping off boats. Well, that has been reversed. So bear with me. I'm thinking of the future. Now, there is one thing that we may disagree. I think that some people will think the pandemic will be over in 6 months to a year and all will be forgotten. And we'll go back to the way it was before. That is not the case, in my opinion, okay? Because the pandemic can come back, okay? And we know, we've read that. But also, this has been seared in people's imagination. The culture will have changed, just like it did in the 1918 pandemic. Many, many things that occurred in 1918, 1920, et cetera, like moving out to the suburbs. It was the first time we actually moved out to the suburbs. Modernism, modern architecture with its very large glass windows and its white color that you could clean, and the metal furniture that didn't have upholstery. That was the result of that pandemic of 1918, that pandemic. And it's still with us. All this stuff is still with us. So I maintain, and you might disagree, that the changes are permanent, at least for a generation. And so we have to design a whole new type of park, and we have to do it essentially without public funding. So you'll be seeing two of those plans today. Next. Okay, so this is the site with the existing buildings. You can see the north. Number 2 is the existing power plant, which has one beautiful hall very tall, beautiful ceiling, and a lot of sort of utility stuff to the east that could be demolished along with these buildings, etc. And already a remediated site ready to be built to the east. To the south, in the red, are mangroves, existing mangroves, which we would of course want to supplement, the two beautiful clean water tanks, and then this stuff that can't be saved and will be gone in 5 years. That'll be gone. At this point here, you can cross underneath the bridge. Not earlier, at this point you can cross underneath the bridge, and there's a harbor, which is really quite interesting. Now, there are a lot of little details and controversies that I'm not going to speak about today because in a way they've been solved. Everybody agrees where the sailing club is going to be. Everybody agrees where the boardwalk is going to be. There's a lot of agreement. That's not what we're talking about. Please consider that what we're facing today is 50, 60%. Remember, this is a plan that had 100% agreement. And now we have a plan that because of the new situation and because I've introduced new elements, we probably have 60% agreement. I am not going to talk about everything that we agree about. I'm going to talk about the things that may be controversial, just to get on with your questions. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the plan on which there was agreement. There was a starting on the east. First of all, over here, just 15, the site across the way. Let's just say that's sold for a shopping center or an office building. By the way, both of those industries, incidentally, are dead. Okay, there are going to be no more shopping centers for a long time and no more office buildings. So this has to be something else. Probably the only thing that would fit there in short order would be an apartment building. Okay, but office buildings are goners. Now over here, in the least important part of the site, we put a parking lot. This, we saved the great hall, turbine hall of the electric power plant, and we put this curved hotel with about 200 rooms on this side. And although the entrance is over here, because that's the distance we have from the bridge, the hotel lobby is on this side, okay? And there are games here, you know, the fields. Then we have this slight curve that takes you in like this, and we have open sheds that are very popular, and of course we've retained them. We also have this used to be a retention pond, and although we kept the shape, we've turned it into a swimming pool, but this used to be more of a retention pond, although none is necessary on the site. And then over here we have a series of restaurants that have different price points, usually 2, maybe 3 restaurants that have different price points so that people with more or less income are welcome and feel comfortable. And then we put here a hall, which we call a meeting room, but could also be a wedding chapel that would raise funds. Wedding chapels and so forth raise a lot of funds, but also it could be used, let's say, for the meeting hall, for City Hall, just for the public meetings. This is a nice place to meet. A harbor for day boaters is built here. And to the south, at this point where there's a launching, is the sailing club. This is this canal, which is beautiful at the moment, could become more beautiful. And we put some glamping tents on it, you know, tents that you can actually camp in the woodlands. And then the two tanks are preserved, and an awning is put between them as a stage for music. This we mothballed. Okay, this area we decided, and actually people agreed, but I have to say, the decision to mothball this site was, although it was made by the council, it was proposed by me. We have to remember that was my proposal. And the reason I made it is that we didn't have any ideas, you know? Insofar as it wasn't a positive thing in which you say, let us mothball it and have somebody else decide. It's, we can't decide, so therefore let's mothball it. But in any case, it's 5 years before the sewer plant is moved out, okay? So I wanna say mothballing is not a positive thing, it's just we didn't have any ideas. Now, since that time, we have had ideas. And I would urge you to think of this as not a mothballing, because now we have ideas, which I'll show you shortly. Okay, this plan was the one that I showed at the last meeting, and it was this among others, but I think the whole process received that famous standing ovation. Okay, so we moved on, and I proposed this to the steering committee. And then when it was done and very popular, next, I said, I really owe you another plan. And so I did this one. Okay, how is this plan different? This plan has a parking lot like before, and it has the conference center, number 2 here as before, and the lobby is on this side, okay, like this. But instead of a large hotel with an enormous internal walkway, and by the way, that large hotel, I'll tell you, and I just spoke to a developer this morning, no one's going to be building a hotel for a very, very long time because the hotels are suspect. They're doing very, very badly. I spoke this morning to Stefan Johansson, who knows about such thing, and he says, forget about the hotel. And actually, he added one more thing. He says, for that matter, forget about the conference center. Okay, but they were thinking about conventional hotels with elevators and hallways and all that kind of thing. And they were thinking about these air-conditioned monsters, which are the conference center. So when I redesigned this, it was different. Okay, this conference center, which is this beautiful thin hallway, this beautiful thin hall, would be cross-ventilated. Okay, so that's an entirely different proposition, and it can be handled. I have lived many times in Florida with cross ventilation with just a little bit of supplement. So this is a different conference center. And as far as the hotels are concerned, instead of a one big hotel, I took a standard Marriott mid-level room and put it in a separate cottage. So what you see here is instead of a hallway, there are lots and lots of little cottages. It's like the way old Florida used to do it. You would come down and not just go to a hotel, but you would actually have little wooden cottages with porches. So this would be delightfully different. I believe that this conference center and this kind of hostelry would actually be so different that we could get funding for it and we could get it built, let me be sarcastic, in our lifetime, because this is a different market entirely. Now, on the other side, we have the open hallway, the open market structures, and just imagine they're multi-use. They can be used from anything from a cat cafe to a, to sell vegetables, to basically you can have outdoor classes, for the kids and so forth. But here, instead of an ecological pool, what I did is I put a real swimming pool. There are lots and lots of kids on the west side of Vero that don't have a pool. They don't belong to a country club. It's difficult they certainly don't have a pool at home, and they certainly don't have much of a chance to get to the beach. Okay, so we said if we really want to make this a place for everyone, let's have an incredibly magnificent pool, huge and fun and surrounded by an open lawn so that people could actually sun themselves and sit very far apart. This is not a tight pool. It's you can distance yourself within the pool, and there are lots and lots of places to actually sit and sun yourself. And then here, you can see this ring of trees, which are palm trees and shade trees. Those are spaced at 20-foot centers, okay, which means that you could bring a blanket and spend the day out there with automatic spacing, social distancing, because the trees make you social distance. So that's what you're seeing here, and that's quite an innovation. Okay, now over here, we have the three restaurants. Now, the three restaurants, instead of being air conditioned, like the ones downtown, are actually open air sheds. And I wanted to make them less expensive and more variable. So what they do is they work, you see how they work here? These are food trucks. So they are actually fed by food trucks, very inexpensive to build. And as long as you cater, as long as you manage the food trucks, you can continually have fantastic food, expensive, less expensive. It changes every weekend if you wish, etc. So this is less expensive. And in front, most of the seating is outside. And these are trees and palms with 10-foot spacing, which is exactly the spacing for a table with an umbrella. And then you have the old meeting hall that was always popular, or chapel, wedding chapel. 3 air-conditioned spaces, the 29s here, because you have to administer the chapel. And there's reason to have they're like little offices, probably administrative for the whole thing. And then these are sand volleyball courts, incredibly popular. And on this side, we actually, as you know, we have actually mothballed this side. Okay. Now, so this was the plan, and this was approved. And then we received a couple of feedback. Do you have the big hotel? No. Okay. This is, no, there's one, which is the one that has the big thing here. Okay, wait, there's another one that I have to show you. We have to get for you. The one that has the arts column. Sorry, we've been doing our best here. Jeez. Unbelievable. Is that the one with the arts column? No, the one with the oval. Okay, so this is the idea we had over here. We said, okay, so let's put the canvas between the two structures. And by the way, these two tanks are beautiful concrete, beautiful tanks. You can actually have galleries inside. You can project art on the outside, and you can have a canvas roof between that makes a wonderful stage. Okay, so then we made a place where you can listen to music, and this is a 10-foot grid on the grass. Okay, like a football field, a 10-foot grid, so you're separated. Your little group is separated. And above it, there's also a grid of wires above with local speakers. So instead of the band actually blaring out and bothering the neighbors, you actually have a speaker above you so that it's actually very loud from where you sit, but it's not loud anywhere else. And then we had this idea of making little cabins here, like this, and that they would be available for artists, for writers, for painters, for sculptures, for musicians, for pianists, etc. And we know for a fact that anybody will come to Florida for the winter. Okay, so we have an arts colony here, and with some bigger spaces up here for other things, let's say the larger sculptures, etc. So the arts colony keeps it alive and keeps it interesting. Now, what about this arts colony? Why are we thinking of this? Well, we have 5 years before the sewer plant is taken away. We can use those 5 years to go to the many wealthy people in Vero Beach on the island, who in fact are notorious for loving they just love to subsidize and donate to art causes. And this isn't that expensive, you know, since each of these might cost, let's say, $150,000, $100,000. You can have many donors. You don't have one big donor for a great, for a great museum or anything like that. Lots and lots of people could donate, and actually we could fill this with a completely creative class and keep it alive. While the hotel here keeps it alive on the other side. And by the way, you notice here, I'm sorry to get over here. Well, let me finish. So you have these standard little 2-bedroom shacks in front, and then behind are the studios that would be specifically designed for writers, musicians, etc. And over here, we still maintain the glamping, the glamorous camping, and then the sailing club and the launching for it. Okay, so this is a proposal. I think that this is something we can try. We don't have to do it if we don't raise the donations in the next 5 years, but at least we have something to do for 5 years. This window of opportunity of having 5 years before the facility is actually cleared might actually give us just enough time to have this extraordinary, quite extraordinary place. And then, so then I showed this. I showed it to Monty and basically to the city. And I said, this hotel is barely going to make it. This, even whether it's cabins or the old hotel with rooms, is barely going to make it. And certainly, the expectation is that they might build their parking lot, okay? And they will. What this hotel would do is build the conference center or renovate it and actually build the meeting hall, wedding chapel. They'll do that. The restaurants might take care of themselves. But who is going to build all this infrastructure? Who's going to build the roads? Who's going to build the playing fields? The courts? Who's going to build the pool? Who's going to plant all that landscaping? And so, in my opinion, that's between $5 and $7 million minimum. And I was counting on the 20 million that was actually the income from the sale of the utility when it happened. Well, guess what? I was told, no, times are different. COVID has eviscerated us. and we can't pay for that. And I said, how can you tell me this? How can you tell me? And he said, well, that's the way it is. We need the 21 million in a lockbox too. So I said, okay, Monty, I will then do a plan that actually carries itself. And in the last couple of days, in fact, after Monty's conversation, in the last couple of days, I came up with this plan. Now, this plan works this way, okay? And this creates a lot of income. There is of course, the conference center that, of course, needs to be renovated. There's a hotel. There's an inside hotel, a conventional hotel of over 200 rooms, with its own pool. And over on this side is a facility that will pay $6 million, which is a boat barn. Again, the boat barn is no taller than the existing power plant, nor is it any uglier. In fact, it can be quite nicer. The boats come out here and they would launch here, okay? Right here using this harbor without bothering any of the neighbors on either side. Okay, so this is a big hit of income, not only at the beginning, but also ongoing. This can generate a gross of about $1.1 million in a year. Okay, then we put a kind of small Key West style apartment building here with lots of treed courts. And each of these has 12 apartments that walk up and over here, okay? These over here, all these apartments are 216 apartments. Again, they're walk-up buildings, they're very small, they're the size of houses. And that will generate, a developer will pay for the right to build those, $6 million. Again, $6 million is plenty enough to get everything built. To get the chapel built, to get the restaurants built, to get the pool built, these are the open pavilions right here, the open pavilions, to build this, to build the docks, to build the playing fields, etc. Okay? And then what we did is we actually made it's still the same old idea of having the tanks and the canvas between them, and then we have a much smaller facility for the visiting artists, just 12 cabins for the visiting artists, and then a two-sided kind of audience space, much less expensive to build here. The glamping continues, as does the Sea Club. Okay, now what I wanted to make clear to everybody in Vero is that there are two plans here. There's one that absolutely requires subsidy, and it's You May Love It More. Go back to it, please. Okay, you may love it more. No, the one with the donations. Okay, you may well love this plan more, but other than the donations for the arts colony down here, somebody has to pay $5 to $7 million. The city has to pay $5 to $7 million to get it off the ground. And you can actually, kick and complain that somehow, but it ain't gonna happen. Okay, so let's just confront the reality. Now, if you want to have a plan that generates income from day one, it's not going to be the hotel, it's not going to be the conference center. Next. Okay, what's going to generate income from day one is the boat barn, which will generate a great deal of income. This will come later when it's revived, when the industry of conference center and hotel is revived. But these apartments will generate another immediate hit of 6 million and ongoing income, which, if you negotiate properly, will be a continual operating income, a very, very luxurious operating income to keep the arts going and to keep all these facilities highly funded forever. Okay, so I just want to back off and say, I've done my job. You either have money and you subsidize it, or you do this plan. Okay, and if you say, well, we don't want apartments, we don't want this, we don't want that, that's fine with me. We can do the other plan, but it's not my fault, okay, if this thing doesn't get built. So I know I've laid a very difficult problem in front of you, both politically, but there is a fiscal solution. By the way, I'm not going to show you renderings. These are all very nice plans. Could you show them, please? I mean, all of them are wonderful. So this is the plan, which here's the boat barn. As I said, perhaps not expected, but it's not uglier than the power plant. This is the power plant, which is now a beautiful conference hall inside with the old much less expensive tent on top. That's going to be the rooftop bar. Here's the hotel, 240 rooms or so, with a nice entrance. You come in like that, and you have this magnificent turnaround, like the great hotels of Florida. And then you have apartment buildings here. Each of these is 12 apartments. They're walk-ups. I'll show you what they look like. And then here are the open markets, very well located. By the way, everything's more compressed now. Theoretically, it could work a lot better. Okay, this is the restoration of the mangroves that makes a park-like facility here. A bit of a wilderness. The kids are here now. Okay, the kids are playing and splashing with inexpensive food and excitement out of the cabins, out of the market buildings. Then the 2 restaurants, which may in this case be air conditioned if you wish. And we were asked to preserve the 3 great chimneys that actually from the ocean and actually from the approach anywhere, these 3 great chimneys, they're actually very handsome. And so we took them off the top of the building, because actually they don't sit on this building, they sit on the ugly part that we demolished. So we took them down and we kept them as a signal, and they're really beautiful, and they will actually shine the lights everywhere. They will light the landscaping, they will light the pool, they will light the courts, they will light, there's nothing better than distant lighting instead of low lighting. Low lighting destroys your retina. Very tall lighting, high up, is like moonlight. Okay, you can see everything, but it's very gentle. And here's Bo has to put in much more trees here. This is a wooded forest. By the way, we did this today. And over here, you can see the canvas stretched between the 2 tanks. And these tanks are fantastic because they're inside art galleries, and outside you can project inside. This stretched canvas is a stage that actually will play music to both sides. And then you have these little apartment buildings with their forecourts. Okay, and the glamping here on the canal. Show me more. This is from the ground. These are the courts. Okay, the sand volleyball courts. And you can see here the 10-foot grid of shade trees, palms, that actually automatically spaces people. And here you see the restaurants behind it. And this is the beginning. We haven't yet done it, but these are the 3, the 3 chimneys. Next. And here it is here's the pool, which would be absolutely delightful. And again, a huge pool with very much children in mind. Okay, this isn't for swimmers. Okay, this isn't for, this is for the kids of Vero to have a great time. You can see the restaurants are just like we drew in the original. And by the way, there are 2 stories. One of the commissioners, Commissioner Moss, said, "Can we go high to get a view? Can we get it high?" And we said, yep. So we made the restaurants 2 stories. So below, and by the way, they can be air conditioned or not to the extent that you wish. This is the meeting hall wedding chapel. As I said, these are the open pavilions. And then you see the apartment buildings, that are just the kind of things that you build in Key West down here. Next. Oh, and by the way, there are food trucks everywhere if you wish. The food trucks can actually be hidden, so they're not ugly, but you can actually find inexpensive food everywhere. Next. And so these are the apartment buildings. You can see that they're full of balconies like that. You can see it's very treed. By the way, I like the way that the spaces are tighter. This is the hotel in the back. Somebody asked to have solar panels on top to run it. Perfect, we put those in. And beyond that, you see, I see this being very highly compatible. I very much like the idea of people living here. So instead of it being a park that dies at night, I would love to see a kind of a park that is surrounded by not by wealthy people. These are rental apartments, okay? Probably belonging to the city, or anyway, you can control the rent if you wish, but actually a place where people live night and day and enjoy it night and day and keep it safe. So these are the little apartment buildings. Next. This is what they look like from the sea. I want to sort of take your fear away. Oh, apartment buildings. Yeah, there are horrible apartment buildings, but these are not horrible apartment buildings. These are the kinds of things that are beloved in Florida. They're not expensive to build. The parking is hidden. This is the parking court here. You can see the road that approaches the meeting hall. I mean, the place is assembled as quite a nice village.
Windsor.
Next. And this is the meeting hall, which is, you know, where the people can dance. The senior center they can dance here in greater dignity than they do there in that old facility of yours. You can actually have public meetings in a beautiful hall instead of the horrible room where you all meet to make decisions. This is the restaurant. You see, the architecture is very compatible, but it's very, very rich, you know, in terms it's both harmonious, but there's a lot of building types. Hotels, apartment buildings, restaurants, small cottages, all these things occur. Next. And most of them paying for themselves. And you can see how the parking lots are actually the occasion. These are graveled parking, small graveled parking courts. Really the occasion to have more and more trees. You know, they're not the Walmart parking lots at all. Look at the hotel with its forecourt, the approach, uniquely elegant. You know, by any Florida standards, it's not your grandmother's Hampton Inn, okay? And then below it, the not so good looking, you know, inside it's beautiful, but the conference center on the outside is what it is. It's an industrial building, and at least it's hidden. It actually can't be seen anywhere. Next. And this is the other side. This is the entrance, and then you can see the forecourts and the apartments. Really what you see in any one street is just two apartments. You don't see, it's not a row of apartments. It's trees and small apartment, tree, small apartment. And then here is basically the hall. Here you see the little houses in the back for the artists, and beyond there's the sailing club, and then the glamping beyond. It's full of trees, full of small spaces. Next. Just a little bit more on these buildings, on the apartment buildings, because I know they'll be controversial. They're the sizes of houses. Next. And this is what they look like. You see they're staggered, so you don't see a big building at all. Every apartment is a corner apartment. And again, they're walk-ups. They don't even have an elevator. And so don't worry about old people living here, okay? This is for the next generation. You know, and then of course the trees. And the parking is blocked with the first two. There's two garages in front that actually block it. Next. 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 I want to show you the apartments. The apartments are completely corner, beautiful loft apartments, 10-foot ceilings, you know, with 2 bedrooms. Next, or 3 bedrooms. Next. Yeah. Inexpensive to build, and this is the streetscape. Okay, there's nothing fearsome about the street. In fact, I'll tell you something. They're probably the best-looking buildings in Vero, both sides of the river. Next. Is that it? Okay, but what about the earlier one? Don't you have renderings of the prior one? Yes, you do. I'm going to show of the ones of this one. Show me renderings.
Okay.
Yeah. We have renderings of the other one as well. We have renderings of this that I want to show you. You haven't shown it yet, have you?
No.
Okay. Okay, we're going back to the second plan. Okay, the one that does not pay for itself, that I'm sure everybody will love, except for the small detail that might not get built. I mean, I'm sorry to be, I think I owe you a reality check. Okay, no, show me that red one. Okay, so this is how that plan works, okay? In red, the parking lot, the conference center, and the hotel, and perhaps even the playing fields and the wedding chapel can be built by the hotel developer. In other words, the hotel developer will actually build a hotel and use they won't give anything to the city, but they will renovate this and build that, and build the conference center, okay? But there's not enough to build the infrastructure. On the other side are elements that are donated. Okay, the sailing club is donated along with its dock, and we will raise funds for the arts village, okay, which is in blue. But all the rest that is in yellow, okay, all the rest that is in yellow does not really make income, and no one is paying for it unless the city does it. And that's the problem. Okay, next. Okay, so this is that rendering. This is the rendering of what I consider would be the popular one. You know, the great restoration of the mangroves on this side, the beautiful meeting hall, fountain at the tip, the 3 restaurants which are basically open with very, very minimal kitchens that have mainly fed by food trucks, the completely delightful and unusual hotel, which is cottages, the lobby for the hotel, and the roof bar, which everybody looks forward to. And then on the other side, the glamping here. Look up glamping. It's elegant camping. The two structures holding up the canvas tent. The place which is gridded for the small speakers. They have this in Chicago if you want to experience it. And then the little cottages for the visiting artists next, which are all in scholarship. And this is what the sand volleyball looks like, including the automatically spaced seating, which is spaced because of the trees. Next. And this is a bit too many, but it shows you how the food trucks would work. You know, I've actually already eliminated 4, but let's say 5 food trucks at a time, and you could curate them to have continually interesting food and continually interesting at different price points. You know, something that a kid can go to and a kind of, you know, somebody with very good taste can actually find exactly the right, let's say, Jamaican food, and the kids can find hot dogs. You know, that's the advantage of food trucks. Next. Oh, and somebody said, what happens with all the outdoor seating? You know, what happens if it rains? And I say, well, they come into these big porches, you know, for the rains. They're the 3 big porches here. Next. And then also there's the porch, huge porch underneath the wedding chapel. By the way, this is in our new towns that we've designed, like Seaside, Rosemary, and Windsor, people get married in these, and there's quite an income from making these, from these wedding chapels. Next. And so this is the hotel, which you can see is unusually pleasant, unlike anything in Florida. And remember, these are Marriott rooms, Marriott mid-level rooms. So instead of being, you know, it's pretty conventional inside. You know, here's your bathroom, here's your desk, here's your double bed, and so forth. But there it is. And then the fantastic woodland, the forest, you know, which is on 20-foot spacing. And then the light standards. And then the pool for the kids. Really fun, huge pool. I used to play in one like that when I was a kid. And then at night, it's a fountain. You know, it makes the noise, the fountain, and it's delightful at night as well. So it's both a night and a day. This is the drop-off for the hotel and the lobby for the hotel. And these, of course, are the courts, you know, all the courts that you all ever wanted to have. Pickleball, you know, all that stuff. And, of course, the skate park. Next. That's the bar on top. That's for adults only. Next. No, go back. And here you can see the incredibly strong spatial quality. You know, there's really nothing like it, you know, anywhere. This kind of steady planting, you know, which is for social spacing, both here and there and across the way. And then the mangrove restoration that you see on this side. Next. Another view. And this is my favorite at the moment, which is the Arts Village. And you see there's these little posts. There are wires on top of these posts with little speakers that actually right above your head, so the neighbors don't need to worry. They're actually not louder than a radio, any of these. And this is the stage area. This is an incredible sort of visual and musical arts and theater arts potential here. And already the buildings are up. Go back here, next. This is what they look like. These are the little cottages, very Florida. Little 2-bedroom cottages for the artists. And these are the speakers. Next. Speakers and lights. This is the glamping. The fantastic, elegant camping. Next. And then a serious kind of building at the entrance to, you know, for recording studios, black box theater, etc. But always very inexpensive, you know, built like a shopping center. No pretension, just something for the young people and for incubating the arts. Across the way, you see the rooftop bar. Next. So this is looking east. Here's the serious buildings. And by the way, you see how every artist cottage has a specialized room in the back. You know, specialized as a writer with a library, specialized for piano, specialized as a studio. In the end, each building would be, the back building would be a different size. The back building, the front is the standard 2-bedroom, but the back would be designed for the kind of artist. And this could be an absolutely killer program Vero, imagine the artist coming down, and you don't have to pay them to come down. Just say, hey, we offer you a cottage and a studio in beautiful weather. Who would turn that down? I don't know anyone. We have this program at Seaside, which is the new town we designed, and it's very successful. No one turns us down. The musicians of the Birmingham Symphony are happy to come down and play every night. And it's the best way to enliven a public space like this. Next, we're done. Okay, so anyway, I know I laid a lot on you. I hope I was perfectly clear. And I would like to hear your comments, please. So I'll switch away.
May I start off, Andres?
Yeah.
I've been monitoring some of the feedback here, and a couple of simple questions that came out, I think, were, are there still plans for a skate park and youth sailing? Those are still in the last version, or both versions?
The skate park is here. In the last version too, yes. That's a skate park. By the way, I'm fascinated. I don't like putting the skate park away from people. If I went to these restaurants, I would sit to watch the kids in their skate park. I think they're absolutely geniuses. So I've always wanted to introduce this skate park in between the restaurants, finally able to do it. And I love watching sand volleyball at night. They play till midnight. That's a very popular sport, even in the heat of summer. They come at night, they play. And then, of course, here's the sailing club on this side with its launching, the existing launching pad and the dock. Okay.
Okay, and then how about a question about the residences, particularly on the north side, possibly even on the south side? Could they also be, say, Airbnb, short-term rentals that might be associated with the hotel instead of permanent residences?
That could be, and of course, that's much more populist, isn't it? That allows every resident of Vero to have a chance to live here. That would be my preference, okay? Perhaps not for all of them, but I do think that the opportunity to live in a place like this, particularly if you're a lost soul in suburbia, just you're in this sort of faceless suburbia everybody's tired of, and here you can actually socialize,
12 on the
and have a nightlife, for God's sake, a nightlife. Yeah, I think I like the idea of Airbnb.
Okay. Just one thing for the audience, if you would like to come on screen and ask a question or offer comments to Andres, please put a note in the Facebook comments saying that you'd like to do that, and we'll arrange to get you a Facebook message that will allow you to come in and ask that question or have a comment. You don't have to ask a question. We'd love to hear from you. Just one other question I know that was asked was, so there you talk about the boat barn. Where would the parking for the boat barn be, and where would the parking for the conference center be in that plan?
Okay, the parking is this. By the way, you should know that I added the boat barn at when did we start? 2 o'clock today?
Yes.
Okay, when I realized that the boat barn was actually $6 million cold cash straight to the city, and probably $500,000 continual income if it were sold. So I added it. And I don't know exactly where the parking is, but there is quite a lot here. Okay, you see it on the edge. There's quite a lot here. There's quite a lot in here. Okay, and of course there's a ton on this side as well. What you're not seeing is a big parking lot. Okay, I don't know where the additional parking is, but I suspect that instead of crumbing up, making this a crummy parking lot, I would park across the way. Just turn that into a parking, maybe a 1-deck parking garage, get it out of here, and just have people, because most of the time it won't be so, the parking can be handled, okay? It's only in festivals that you would actually completely overdo it. And you can handle this with a jitney, like a small parking garage on this side could be handled by a jitney. But that's my preliminary thinking. I would really hate, of course I can add more parking lots. But this scheme is kind of so cool that I just hate to give over parking, too much to parking. Of course, the apartments are self-parked, okay? Mm-hmm. That's fine. And there is some parking here, probably not enough.
Okay.
Anyway, this is a moving target. As I said, this boat barn, when I saw the $6 million check, I put it in at 2 o'clock without thinking too much about the parking.
Do you still prefer the other plan, some of the first plans that you designed, or is this is more of a financially viable plan?
I go back to the one with the arts festival. I think that the arts plan, I think that this plan is probably the most advanced plan in the world at the moment. It really is the first post-COVID, taking advantage of everything that we have been alerted to. You know, when I started designing this and I said, being outdoors, being spaced, being under trees, separating the hotel rooms, I said, this is not torture. This is the way Florida was meant to be. And what it did is that it alerted me to the beautiful weather that we have uniquely. Don't try this in New York, okay? Don't try this in Atlanta. It's too cold. Only Florida can do this. And I think, you know, I ended up just loving it, loving what this implied. However, it is short on vitality. Okay, there's nothing like having apartments, you know, having a little bit of a city, you know, like the European waterfront harbors like Saint-Tropez and so forth, you know, in which people also live there. I don't know to what extent we can hybrid, but I think this is an absolutely lovely plan. But it's been, I was told in no uncertain terms, okay, I want to plant my foot down, that there isn't money for this. Okay, that the city does not have the $7 million to build the infrastructure for this. And so I don't know whether that's it's going to be the political will or whether somebody's going to write a check, but the realistic plan is the other one.
Yeah, and just one comment. I mean, I usually don't make comments on air like this, but you know, it seems to me that if the community wanted to try to fund some of those improvements privately, you know, this community is known for saving McKee Botanical Garden. You know, spending a lot of money on that and other facilities that have been, you know, there's a land trust out there that's spent a lot of money. So, you know, when Monty's looking for some funding, there may be a private way to sort of create some of those plans on the north side.
And one of the things I have to say, you know, we designed Windsor up there on the beach side. There are houses that are $7 million, you know, excuse me. But, you know, this is an incredibly wealthy community. And I think what happens is the plan has to be incredibly compelling. Somebody has to fall in love with it, you know, and then, yes, we might be able to raise funds.
Okay, anybody out there, anybody that's watching, again, if you're interested in commenting or asking a question live on Facebook here, please make a note in the notes in the Facebook comments, and our producer Adam Neal will send you an email that helps you hook up with us. Kelly, are there any questions here? We've got a comment from Kimberly Gibbs. Question for Andres: are the cottages for living working artists? And if so, will they only be a certain kind of artist, a painter or writer?
Well, I can only think of four writers that actually, and I can imagine what their little, well, if you know Chautauqua in New York, which is that town that was built in 1870 for artists for summer. And if you go see the studios, you'll see that they have little cottages for artists. And there's a certain kind that's set up for piano, and another one that's set up for cello, violin, and another one that's set up for a writer, and that's full of bookshelves, and the table is just right, and there's an easy chair. And then there's a big one for sculptors. So I think if we can actually think of musicians, writers, and sculptors, we have it kind of covered. You know, graffiti artists, well, maybe they can actually put it on the water tanks for a while.
Okay, that sounds good. There actually is a graffiti artist, pretty famous graffiti artist in town. But we have another question for you. For Monty, I think this next question is for, let's see, this is a comment actually. Thank you for your time, Andres. Beautiful way to introduce more housing. Talking about Savannah, maisonette apartments with lots of garden squares with benches for meditation, reading, and lunching. Could our trees space be like that? Lots of places for meditation, reading, and lunching?
Well, I think you have a choice always. There's an awful lot of naturalistic landscaping here. Here you can hide in old Florida. But I think that actually sitting between 4 shade trees and a couple of palm trees, in your own inviolate space. I think you have to get into scale in there to see what a 20 by 20 foot space is that's actually yours for the day. And yes, I think you can meditate. Of course, there'll be the screams of little children. I don't know what to do about that. But generally, I don't know how peaceful this might be. You might actually find some peace back here, in the natural landscape. I think this might be a little loud with happy children, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We got another question. Jesse Ray asked a question. I think this is probably from Monty. What happened to the $20 million the city said they would have?
Yeah, Larry, the $21 million that is the remainder from the FP&L purchase of our electric utility is still there. None of those funds have been allocated for any specific use. And that was the message that we communicated throughout the process. The council could allocate some of those funds for a portion of the project, but we were pretty specific all along saying that we wanted, as a worst case scenario, for this to be a revenue neutral project for the city.
Okay, thanks, Monty. I think we have another question coming up from Heather Zevin. Looks like the square footage of the skate park has been significantly decreased.
Well,
Andres,
it depends. This one is, skate parks are different sizes. I don't know what the size of this one is, but we didn't find anything too standard. The other one is bigger. So there's this one and this one. They're not significantly increased. No, it's always been the same size. Although I have to say, there's no standard. When you realize that kids are actually playing on benches downtown, I've seen them. I'm not sure there's a minimum skate park, but these are by no means small. I think that skate park, you need to have a really, really skillful skate park designer more than a large one.
Okay. And then, so you have two pools in this plan, Andres, right? You have the one on the hotel sort of,
Yeah.
Is that a rooftop pool or something?
No, that's not a rooftop pool. It's just the hotel needs it as a checklist item.
Okay, and then there's a sort of a public pool. Is that the two and a half?
That's the cool one, which is, listen, I have a vision of this pool from my own childhood. And it's very shallow. It's like a beach. And you can just splash all over it, and the adults can't swim.
Good deal. We have another good question. It's coming from YouTube. Is there a way that we can pull that one in, Kelly? Okay, I don't know that we can pull that one in as easily. We'll put it on the screen later. Anybody else have a question? Here we've got a question. That's a good question there about the volleyball. Mike G asked a question for Andres. Are there walking areas around the sand volleyball areas? And my question on top of that would be, is there a walking path along the water all the way around the property?
Okay, so there is a wood plank walk. Could you get in there a little bit? It's a little small, but there's pavement. Okay, let's see, where are we? Okay, in white is pavement. Okay, and then there's a wooden walkway. Do you see it? This is a boardwalk. The kind of thing that's very marine, and it goes out to the fishing pier. So that's wooden, timber, lumber. And then around the base, around these sand courts, these are like indentations that are filled with sand, because the tables need real pavement or they tip. And since this is principally about tables, we needed to pave it. But I want to say the 29 here is naturalistic. Okay, this is native species. It's like a park. It's like a natural park. And then this one is much more like a place where you sit or you lie sunning yourself. But the whole thing is one big pool deck, as it were. And I have to say that it really is for little children, who actually didn't show up at the charrette. But it has been mentioned that what are the kids in town going to do? And this is what they like to do, especially on hot days. And at night, when the adults are there, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, huge pool, beautifully lit, with sprays at night, making a sound.
Okay. Well, when you talk about that pool, you talk about between the trees and the pool, what would be there? Is it grass? Is it, is it sand?
Okay, hold your ears. The only thing that works is AstroTurf.
I thought you might say that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one more question is, when you go, okay, we've got a question from a reader here. What is that huge building at the front of the sewer plant?
Which one? This one?
At the front
30?
of the sewer plant.
30? The sewer plant is here.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that question.
Apartment building. This number 30 is the boat barn. That's the cash cow. There's no building. Yeah, this is the cash cow. This is the immediate check that comes in and allows you to build all the infrastructure.
Okay.
And renovate everything, it just gets you going almost immediately.
Okay, I've got one more follow-up question, which is about when you look at the mangroves on the very top there of the image you're looking at.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're going to put more mangroves in there. Is there a walking trail anywhere up on the perimeter of the property there?
I have to say, I don't think so. No,
Okay.
I don't think up there. And furthermore, I don't think the neighbors to the north, whose backyards are directly across, want to be overlooked. Okay, they say, I've got my backyard out here. I'm grilling hot dogs in my underwear, and I certainly don't want anybody looking at me. So the answer, I should say clearly no, out of respect to their existing. They're accustomed to having nobody look at them, okay, in their backyards across that canal. And so I would say that's why we did the dense mangrove for them.
We've got a question from Kristen. Are kayak rentals still in either plans? A kayak rental, paddle boards, those kinds of things?
I think so. I think that actually here, exactly under the 26, under that number, administered from the sailing club, that would be full of kayaks and other dangerous apparatus.
Okay. Got a question here, or it may be more of a comment from Beth coming up. But just a reminder to everybody that if you want to come on air and ask a question or even comment, make a note in the Facebook comments there, and we'll send you a link to be able to do that. So Beth, can you pull that comment in, Kelly, from Beth? Okay, here we go. One of the comments from Beth Powell. She suggested some kind of walking trail that connected to the Lagoon Greenway. So that's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah, there is a walking trail here on the east. You see that we kept it continuous.
Mm-hmm.
To be some kind of bike trail. There's nothing continuous now. Well, you can generally stay on the waterfront, here, but I think it's better at this point to not, to go inside sometimes. By the way, some of the walking trail is underneath the arcade of the chapel.
Right.
It's not this continuous, similar experience. There are different things that you can do as you go along.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions, comments? Anybody want to call? Nobody's ventured to come in by video yet, so I'm kind of surprised by that. You have an opportunity, so that's Andres. You want to describe what you're showing us there?
This is the one that has the apartment buildings, the small apartment buildings. You can see here and by the way, a very interesting thing. I do listen to input, and one of the things that stunned me is they said we don't want to lose the chimneys, the 3 chimneys that are on the tall chimneys that are on the power plant. They orient us. The boaters know where it is, and actually, it's also visible from the approach on the street. And so, although they no longer make any sense on top of the building, because that's not where they are. They're not on top of that building. They're on the building part that we demolished. We put them in front. And actually, when you look at them with their little platforms, they're really handsome. They're really handsome, and what I love is their ability to hold light, specifically light that will light the tops of the trees and will light the courts and will light the pool. But the privilege is of having light sources so distant that they don't have a hot spot, that they actually bathe the whole thing in moonlight. And that's the ideal, except people can't afford to do these things. But in any case, they're beautiful structures, and we treated them as sculpture.
Well, they certainly make it unique to Vero Beach, as that's what, I think in one of the charrettes, some ocean boaters commented that they use those lights as a guidepost.
By the way, they're much lower than before.
They're a lot lower now.
They're much lower because the base used to sit on top of the building. Okay, they're now they're on the ground, so they're less tall, but you can still see them.
60 feet lower.
Okay, do we have another comment there? We've got a question from Mike G. Is your food truck concept similar to a ghost restaurant scene developing in DC?
Well, it's similar to a place in Miami called The Yard that has that basically has a tent that sells beer and drinks and has about a dozen food trucks that are very, very carefully curated to be excellent at what they do and to have the variety. So what I had in mind was actually The Yard, and also a place called Wynwood that has permission to have them on the street. But the great thing is that the food trucks can change, and actually the word spreads. Oh, this weekend there's an amazing food truck that came in from Tampa, with Cuban sandwiches, right? Or somebody can say, well, the famous Jamaican food truck is coming in this weekend. And so it keeps the place really active, and it isn't just the same old menu. There's something very agile about food trucks. The problem is that they actually need a place where you can eat that's more dignified than hanging around a parking lot. That's where they fail. And so by providing arcades and porches, that combination is wonderful. Food truck plus open porches.
Okay. We got another question here from Karen here. How many restaurants will there be? I think 2 or 3.
No, well, there used to be 3, but I think that's really pushing it. And the way I think of them is a more expensive restaurant, for special events and people that really want a big old steak for $30. And then an inexpensive one where a family can actually find grilled cheese sandwiches. Okay, so I think 2 is the minimum. And then the open sheds, which you see over here in this line, the open sheds, which would be very active on weekends, with farmers markets and art fairs and so forth, because they're very programmable, could also have between them, you see, no big deal, but as you could actually find a little food in between if you really can't afford the big old thing over here. The sit-down restaurant, that's quite an investment. Building one of these guys is a big investment. It's many millions of dollars. And so they have to charge for it. It's the old, brownie that costs $7. Okay, I understand. They have to pay for the building. Food trucks, you can get a brownie for $3, and it's just as good.
Okay. Just another reminder, if you want to come on and ask a question on video, we'd love to have you. Just ask the question in the Facebook comments area, and we'll send you a link to come on live to either offer a comment or ask a question. Got a question here from Heather. What about light pollution and the lagoon wildlife?
Well, I have to say, there will be lights at night because humans require lights at night. And there's an incompatibility between the human nightlife and dark sky, and it's always been thus. But this is not something that we're doing up and down the whole lagoon. It's just this one spot in the lagoon where I would say this is where the humans can have this particular kind of foothold, But it's not up and down. There's a lot of the creatures can move to So, by the way, some creatures do enjoy humans. Humans are fun, but they can also move off to the darker parts, of which there are many.
Sure.
But I'm not going to say that there isn't going to be lighting. You can't get humans to come out at night unless there's lighting.
Exactly. Okay. Got another question coming up. Why is it stated that there's no stormwater projects necessary? What's the issue there?
Because the whole thing has been handled. There's all, maybe not in this one, okay? In this one that has more pavement, I haven't calculated it, but in the prior one, there's just so much pervious surface. In the prior one, there's just so much open space, you see?
Right.
Show me the plan. Yeah, it's just nothing but open space. It just filters naturally. There's very little pavement. So that's why. Now, in the new one with the apartment buildings, okay, that we have to recalculate. And we may have to do porous pavement and suds and all these things in this one. But the prior one, which is the one I was referring to, doesn't need that pond in the middle. We can have a pool.
Hey, Monty and Jason, are porous surfaces allowed in the city? Or would you make it a special exception for this?
Well, the way the code's written now is that porous surface that can be used for infrequent parking. But for the concept, we may have to look at some, additional design criteria for something, as unique as this.
You can also put it underneath the buildings, which is, if you look at our new towns up in the Panhandle, but they're very dense, like Alice and Rosemary, and you ask yourself, where is the porous surface? It's actually underneath the buildings.
Yeah.
The buildings are raised 3 feet, and it all goes underneath. It's sand beds there, and it goes down. It's just not shown. We don't brag about the porous surface. They're actually utilitarian.
Okay. I think we have another question here from Gunnar Dudley. The parking seems insufficient for what is being programmed. You talked about parking a little bit before, Andres, but
the parking, I would say, the parking is sufficient it depends on the plan. The prior plan has sufficient parking. This one has sufficient parking. It's just everywhere. It's just not in one big lump, right? We have it everywhere if you look for it. But in the second plan, the one that's the one that has the apartments, these are parking lots. Each of these are self-parking completely, okay? And there's parking at the edges. What I haven't done is made a big parking lot. And if there is not enough parking for event parking, okay? At which point I think we should reserve number 13 across the way for event parking. But I can certainly find more parking spaces by looking for them. But a lot of this parking, if it's just for event parking, for the special event, you don't want to crumb up the whole site with parking just for what's called the peak event.
Right. We got another question, I think, out there. Currently, there is a tower on the roof of the electric building that appears to be a cell phone tower. What will happen to that? Any thoughts on that, Monty?
That one's gone. There's an ugly one and 3 pretty ones. We kept the 3 pretty ones. Got rid of the ugly one.
Yeah, Larry, the cell tower is coming down within the next year, and a new one's going to be constructed in the vicinity.
Okay, and what's the timetable on the substation being dismantled there?
Well, as a matter of fact, they just are doing some testing to switch over to the new substation at the end of last week and the beginning of this week. Shortly, that should be all operational on the west side of the boulevard, and then we could look at dismantling coming up in the next, couple months or before the end of the year for the substation and the current power plant.
Okay. We might have another question here. Question from Anastasia Hunnebrink. If we wanted to submit alternative concepts, what is the deadline and where do we submit them?
Well, it depends how alternative it is. The deadline is officially completely over quite a few weeks ago. We did this charrette. We made the presentation that November. That was my contract, is to do that. This is my own initiative to do this, to actually do all this work without pay, actually, essentially. So I do not feel that I need to absorb a full plan. What I would like to do is to hear your ideas and as you know, I'm very flexible with ideas. I want to hear your ideas, but I don't want to see a drawing that I have to somehow talk you out of. That's not, my contract's finished. So, but you can phone me personally and give me your ideas. I would certainly take that.
Is there a good way to tell the public how they should contact you?
Well, I think you can actually, Irina Wolf, who's been running the public outreach, will actually notifies me as soon as something interesting or problematic comes up, okay? Now, the amount of input that we're getting could be in the hundreds, so obviously we're not going to respond to everything. Right. Certainly not, you can count on that. But every once in a while, something really interesting comes up, and then we do act on it. I'm immediately alerted and I act on it. Now, if you do not get a response, I think you should assume your idea isn't very good. Actually, I'll be very frank.
Yeah, so if somebody wants to contact you, they can go through Irina, and Irina can put her contact information in the Facebook chat area. It'll be there. I'm sure she'll go in and
somebody will say, hey, here's an idea, or here's a problem. Okay, and mostly, but I have to say it's problems. Your Vero is specialized in problems. And I've been heard to complain, can't somebody have an idea for a change?
Yeah. So one more thought, and this maybe is for, that's a question, good question there. What's the time frame to completion? Maybe I'll ask both of you to answer, both of you to weigh in on that. Why don't you go first, Andres?
Well, completion, I think this comes up, I believe on the 18th. This gets shown to City Council, and then they will do what's called basically the City Councils or the charter plan. And that will be put up for referendum at the time of the national election. Yay, nay. So this can either be voted in or it will be voted out, in which case you'll get practically nothing. I'll show you the plan, which is, one of the things that's important in something like this that has to go for referendum. It's basically to report to you guys what happens if you do nothing. Like, what happens if you turn this down? What do you get? And it's pretty sparse. You don't have to do this now, but I think you should just know that what is actually, you can very easily turn this down and get almost nothing, which is what you get. So
right. So if people want to weigh in,
like so many things, you need to get behind initiatives as challenging as this one. This is a big deal. And there's a very big difference between a great plan that will actually be wonderful for a couple of generations of your residents and a kind of desiccated, undernourished, almost nothing plan. And so that's the existential choice that comes about the election.
Right.
And so I would say that a group like this, if you're excited by either of these 2 or 3 plans, it isn't going to happen if you just lay back and don't vote, because great things don't happen when no one pushes them.
So what do you think about a build out, at least on the north side? How long would you think that might take?
I spoke to a developer this morning, who said, I'll write you a check for $6 million. Okay, as soon as you let me know, and then I'll write you another check for $6 million for the apartment building. So, okay, this morning in a phone call, I got $12 million. Okay, which is to say, if you can get behind one of these plans, we can start early next year. However, if you don't like this particular plan, this plan is not your plan, I really don't know where the money's coming from, and then you have to lobby the elected officials to get you the $7 million for the other one, which, by the way, is potentially a better plan. I'm not saying this second one isn't better. Okay, this one might be better, but somebody has to write a check. Okay, for the landscaping, for the roads, for the infrastructure.
Okay, and then so just Monty, to go over again. Can you talk about what City Council is going to do Tuesday? And I guess just for me to comment, it's important that residents, if you're really interested in this, to make sure, I know it's a tough time to get there, but definitely talk to City Council about what your ideas are and make sure they know before they vote on a plan Tuesday. But what time is that Tuesday? They're going to vote on a plan and possibly language to put on the ballot?
Yeah, the meeting Tuesdays at 8:30, Larry, it starts, and this will be one of the prime things on the agenda. But I want to reiterate, this is really unprecedented what Andres has done for us. You know, we had the plan that received the standing ovation at the church earlier in the year, and things around us changed. And Andres came and offered at no additional expense to the city to relook at this and see what he could come up with that would be compatible with his view of how the pandemic is going to change planning. And he came up with a great plan. The council and the steering committee loved it and actually voted on it. And then as we talked last week, we expressed, and I expressed, my trepidation of having a plan that was going to be harder to be financially feasible. And then he offered and has done an enormous amount of work this weekend coming up with that other plan that showed the apartments and showed the other revenue generating ideas. So there's been just a ton of effort on his part to get us to where we are. But if we're going to move forward and get this while it's in the public's forefront, we have to do something at this council meeting to say, are we going to get on that ballot for the November election? Now, if we don't get it, the project's not going to die. It's just going to lose some inertia that we've had with all the interest in it. So we're trying to get there, and we'll have that discussion at the council meeting, and hopefully we'll get to a decision and can move forward from there.
Okay, we got a question, another question out there from a member on Facebook.
Good.
Kelly, you want to load that one up? That's 754. Okay. I think the question was, I'll paraphrase it since it's not, we can't seem to find it. Maybe I can find it real quick. Here, we got it right there. So question that's for Monty from Pellegrino Hot. Does Vero ever put bond referendums on the ballot? And that's how they, I guess, up there, and that's how various communities paid for parks and other public projects.
We have not done that in the past, and not to say that it couldn't be done, but you're talking about Vero Beach and the greater Vero Beach area, and a lot of people get confused with that. Vero Beach is a small geographic area, 12 square miles, just shy of 18,000 people, and Indian River County, geographically huge, amount more space and 150,000 people. But there's more than 100,000 people with the Vero Beach mailing address. So we have to take all that into consideration when we're doing the public input, and we did that. But when it comes down to actually being responsible for the project, it's the residents of the city of Vero Beach, that 18,000 people in that 12 square miles. So that's why we're trading cautiously, and hopefully we'll have something that we can make work and have something the whole community can enjoy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess it's almost 8 o'clock, and I appreciate your taking last 90 minutes to be with us, both the folks in the audience, Monty and Andres. Once again, another informative evening with another plot twist and another design. And so this is all out there now. And Tuesday, 8:30 at Vero Beach City Hall. And or if you have comments, I'm sure you can email the city manager or City Hall. You can go to covb.org, I think it is.
That's correct.
So make sure if you have comments, this is a big meeting Tuesday at 8:30. Irina Wolfley, her email should be on her contact information should be on Facebook. And thanks to her for helping organize this. Thanks to Kelly Rogers and Adam Neal for working behind the scenes to put this together. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can do this again sometime. Thank you all very much.
It was fun. Great.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.